Adoption of the agenda, any additions from administration?
No, Your Worship.
Any additions from council? I have a motion to accept. Needed?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, all in favor? Adoption of the minutes. Did anybody find any errors in the minutes?
Move as, to adopt the minutes as presented.
Okay, any questions on that motion? None? It called a question. All in favor? It's approved. Okay, move down to 4.1. Amended draft policy 6204, emergency relief assistance for catastrophic events. You gonna take that one?
I am with Joan's absence.
Okay.
I'm speaking to it. So, good evening, Deputy Reeve and Council. In front of you is the policy, draft policy 6204, emergency relief assistance for catastrophic events. These amendments are being brought back to you based on your feedback at the last council meeting. You wanted it less broad and localized, so there were some changes that you can see in the rationale for recommendation. We have a list there of the changes that were made based on your feedback and your conversation. You wanted to bring it to this committee so you can have a conversation and see if there was any other amendments you'd like to make.
Any discussion on that? Go ahead, Al.
So, in a nutshell, basically, the policy is going back to the way it was.
Not only the way it was, more defined and clearly focused. At the time, we didn't have, the other policy, if you see, it was very simple. There was no actual, we referred to applicants, there was no application. There was an eligibility and the purpose of the policy weren't very clear, so it would go back to cover what it was, but it'd be deeper, a little bit more fuller, I guess, for lack of a better word.
From an administration.
From an administrative and more, it's just clear, having those definitions is making a huge difference.
Sure.
But we also needed to talk about the definition for what a catastrophic event is. And before it was pretty broad. So this is more focused, but it is going back to more the intent of what the previous policy was. It wouldn't cover those massive, like a wildfire that would go through the county or such, so.
Any more discussion? Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if there is nothing else, I'd be prepared to move the council forward amended draft policy 6204, emergency relief assistance for catastrophic events to council for consideration.
A motion on the table. Any questions related to the motion? Call the question, all in favor? Passed. Who's taking this one? The Floodway Development Regulation Bill 27 RMA Fall Convention Resolution Submission.
Your worship, members of council, we proposed a resolution for council's consideration that if there are any amendments would then be brought directly to council meeting at the next council meeting so that we have an opportunity to get it to the Pembina Zone 3 meeting and then and hopefully endorsed by the zone members and then off to the RMA convention that is in November of this year, early November of this year. So we looked at the regulations. The regulations were, sorry, let me back up. The bill 27 was passed quite a few years ago, and that the regulations have never been implemented. There's been attempts that throughout the years, the Alberta government made attempts, and then unfortunately circumstances got in the way, and there was some political interference in regards to some proposed exemptions. So we've taken a shot to see where we believe that the government has to either implement the existing regulations that are in draft form or ensure that the regulations have enough teeth in them so that people understand when they're in a floodway or flood fringe that they are able to either not develop or develop with certain criteria.
Any discussion on, okay, go ahead, Al.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So through the chair to administration, so the therefore be it resolved says that we want to prioritize and expedite the passage of Bill 27. Did you say just a minute ago that the bill has been passed?
Yeah, it's the, and then you gotta carry it further, the Alberta Flood Regulations Act. Right, so the act is passed, but the regulations haven't been implemented.
Okay.
So every act has regulations, or the vast majority of them, so.
Go ahead, Peter.
Through the chair, what's the implementation process?
Once the caucus approves the regulation, so the bill gets passed, the regulations are developed, the executive council, like the members that are, what's the word I'm looking for? The government that is in power has, the caucus approves the regulations.
So we're at a point where the regulation hasn't been approved yet. Is
That's
that
correct.
okay? So that's what we're after, is to get.
That's correct, yeah.
Oh, Al.
Through the chair to administration, so not to be nitpicky, but if the bill's been passed, should the resolution be to expedite the implementation of the bill rather than the passage of the bill? Like, I understand that the points 1 through 9 relate to the implementation, but if the bill's been passed, isn't it an error to ask them to expedite the passing of it?
So you're suggesting that the Alberta Legislation Assembly prioritizing that the, so what you're saying, sorry, I'm trying to write, the government of Alberta implement the Alberta Flood Regulations Act, flood regulations for Bill 27.
Yeah, I think we're
Would
saying-
that be a better?
Yeah, well, so just to ask the question again, the bill has been passed, but
Yeah.
it hasn't been implemented, so yeah.
The bill has been passed and given third and final reading, the regulations haven't been
Okay,
in.
so we want the regulations to be implemented.
Okay, Peter.
Through the chair to administration. It says that in 2013, they amended the Municipal Government Act, Section 693 of the development in the floodways. When was the bill passed?
2012.
So we haven't had an implementation of the regulations since 2012.
Let me just double check, I wanna make sure. There's somewhere in the background it says. How come I don't have any,
2012 is when the flood study was commissioned by Woodlands.
Yeah, but when was the bill passed?
Is there any other background information that was provided?
So they ended up passing Bill 27, and what it says is that you've got to develop in accordance with these regulations. And then you go over to the area where the regulations are supposed to be, and they're completely blank. There's no regulations at all. So that's just sat there empty for all these years. And you're touching on the difference between the bill that says develop in accordance with these regulations and the actual regulations. So we're trying to lean on the government to get them to develop the regulations itself.
Okay.
If that helps a little, because I think there's a little confusion on the difference between the bill and the actual regulations. The bill says you have to develop the regulations, but the regulations were never developed by the GOA.
Okay, thank you. That clears it up.
Yeah, and there is a working paper. It would have been nice if it was included on this, but there is a working paper that I think is from 2014 that talks about, the province did look at it, and they've got a working paper on it. It's really easy to find. About some suggestions, but they could never come to an implementation for it. So that's where we're at.
So it looks like, according to the background here, that the enactment of Bill 27 happened in December of 2013. And there was regulations developed, but they were just never implemented.
There was a working paper.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a draft working paper, I think is what they called it. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
and sorry if I could.
Back to the resolution.
I think what we might want to do with this, as a result of the governance and priorities meeting, is make a motion to actually send this off to RMA in the form that it is, and just have them go through it in their resolution crew to make sure it's set up properly, and then after that's done, it comes to council, and we pass it, and then it goes to the zone.
Sure.
And I
That
think
makes sense.
because they work hard on the resolutions and trying to smooth them out. It's a much easier process if you do it with them involved, and then they can advocate. It's pretty straightforward, I think, but you're right, there might be some confusion between the advocating for the bill versus the regulations that the bill is requiring to develop, so.
So, through the chair, back to Councilor Burrows. So what I'm hearing you say is that a recommendation should be that the GMP committee forward this proposal to the RMA and have the RMA vet it and send it back to our council.
That would be my suggestion, unless it's been done already. I don't know if it's been developed with RMA or run through the resolution writing period at RMA.
Your worship, members of council, we did reach out to RMA, Teresa, I want to say Teresa, but that's not right, Blumenthal, Tasha, thank you. And, but we haven't sent the actual, we've drafted it, but we haven't sent the actual resolution back to her. That was our intent. Once council had a look at it, is we were going to forward it back to her to get their perspective from it and on it. But again, whether it goes back, we're in a little bit of a time crunch, only because we're trying to make September 25th deadline, right? So if you forward on to the RMA, the Pembina Zone 3 meeting, and their changes recommending that, we would hopefully have it back to you at the 13th council meeting, which is only a week away.
It should work.
So again, your suggestion would be to.
Well, it even sounds like admin was leaning in that direction, so we've looked at it here, it looks good. It's basically pushing it on to the GOA to develop the floodplain regulations so that we have them developed across the province. And Alberta is one of the weakest, if not the weakest province in all of Alberta on floodway regulations. And I think we're just gonna get ourselves further and further into trouble until we get some hard regulations that way. And it's also putting people in a really precarious position right now, where if they do develop in those areas, this is going to happen. Eventually, these regulations are going to happen. It's going to put residents in a tough spot. So, my suggestion would be that we take this, excuse me, and forward it to the RMA. The RMA does any changes, takes it to sends it back to us. We get it at the meeting on the 13th, and then pass it and send it to the Zoom.
You may end up getting it the day of, or, right, because we're looking at 3 business days right now. 4 business days.
But I think that would probably be the give it the most scrutiny before it goes to zone.
It's tight, and they kind of know this is coming.
Okay, so
Yeah, I know.
Any more discussion on it?
yeah, just so that for the motion, rather than to send that back for consideration approval, should the motion read that we send it directly to RMA to vet and then bring it back to council? Is that what, and then from there it would go to the zone? Is that what the motion should read?
Yeah, you're members of council, you can do both. You can forward it on to council and RMA for their review as well, right? And on the 13th, hopefully you have their comments for consideration, right? Because all what they're gonna do is say, you need to correct this because this is more clear or whatever, or it looks fine, or you got the wrong bill, and again, I'm suggesting that, but, right? So they're gonna provide some suggestions. The question will it be available on the 13th, right? And again, the only reason why we're trying to get this in front of is you got a Pembina zone meeting for endorsement for September 25th, so. That's what,
Even if RMA is a few days late, it still wouldn't meet zone 3.
well, you can ask for, we can do amendments, and then council at the RMA could say, here's the proposed suggestions of the 2, right? And we recommend that even though you haven't formally endorsed it, right? The intent is to get a resolution for the regulations, right? And any suggestions, changes, as long as it doesn't change, right?
Any more discussion?
I'll make a motion then that Governance Priorities Committee forward the proposed floodway development regulation bill 27 resolution to council and RMA for consideration and approval.
Okay, we have a motion, any discussion on the motion? Call the question, all in favor? Passed. Next we go to 5.1, amending policy 501, care community angels for recreation enrichment.
Good evening again.
Heather's taken that one.
I am. So the Community Services Committee has been looking at some other policies to just make sure where we're at, if we're current, are we meeting the needs of the community? And all our policies still relevant? Do we need to bring them up to date? So this is one that we've done. Right now, it's currently the policy 5103 care. It's the Community Angels for Recreation Enrichment. And we just found that the committees just said that maybe we need to rename the policy to make it a little bit easier to understand what it is and make some eligibility procedures a little more clear. If you can see from before, it was a little brochure. The policy it was updated in 2019, but it really wasn't clear still on eligibility. And so we really wanted to focus on what we've been working on with the benefits program and keeping the low income amounts there. We didn't have it in the previous policy. So the eligibility is clearer in this new policy, and we felt that the new name could be YES. So Youth Enrichment Subsidy, and it can be anything, where before it was leaning towards recreation mostly, but we were also wanting to include children that want to take piano lessons or music lessons or art classes. We've got a new, the Woodlands Art and Music Guild up in Fort Assiniboine. They're getting a lot of members joining, and their programming is increasing, so that was why the subsidy as a and yes has that feeling, the energy behind it. So that is what is before you.
Any discussion on this policy? Peter?
When I was looking at this from, there was, I see there was very little application as to how you put that to the, I think it's a great idea and I think it's a great program. How you would put that in the community. And the other thing is that I am very sure advertising as more broad-based than just recreation. I'm very sure that you would get people that would be willing to donate to that program.
Yes, and the committee also discussed increasing the marketing for this. So for 2024, you're gonna notice when we have discussions that there might be more money for marketing this program. Currently, we've had swimming lessons and Taekwondo. Just recently, this year, we've had 2 applications so far. So it's, word of mouth is happening, but we were thinking of marketing it when we were discussing, not just at the schools, because we've had the school apply. The Fort School applied for a couple students, that we would market it with the other community groups, all the other sports groups, on our website, have some other things that way, and help broaden the knowledge so that people know that it's available. A lot of people didn't know that it's available. And that we would keep in align with the eligibility for low income. So it's those same numbers we've been using. LICO, I realize might be, triggering, but we're gonna keep with those numbers that we have for the benefits program.
That's another question. What would the mechanism be that would allow the people the residents in the community to donate to that program?
Oh,
What would the mechanism be?
I don't think we'd
Like-
accept donations.
Well, your worship, through to Councillor Kochen, if an individual wanted to donate that, and they can come in, ask for that specifically, we would then have to set up a reserve fund because they've asked for it specifically. At this present time, we don't have that. And then that money would be then available for the committee to allocate, so it is possible. It's just, we've never done it, right? We get occasionally, individuals, providing funds for, they wanna donate something and we'll accept it, but it doesn't happen very often.
I just wanted to thank Heather for writing this up. It's nice to see that we're kind of taking ownership of our youth and our community, and the rural FCSS picture is starting to become a little clearer. So this is kind of part of that, and I just wanted to give you a thumbs up on that. I hate the word kudos. So, but I just wanted to give you a little props for that. It's the and the things with the window on some of these things are so tight. You miss a year of this and they don't get eligibility for that, and they start too old and they get, like football, for example. I started football. I played hockey all the way, but I was I didn't get into football until I was older, and that's not something you want to do when you're older. So you gotta learn how to get hit. Anyway, it's a good program, so well done.
Go ahead.
I can make a motion that the Governance and Priorities Committee forward amended policy 5103, youth enrichment subsidy to council for consideration.
Any discussion on that motion? No. Call the question, all in favor? Move to 5.2, Hamlet and gateway signage. Karina's gonna take that one.
I got it. So good evening, committee. Councillor Prestige, at our July 12th GMP meeting, you asked that we bring Hamlet and gateway signage here for a discussion specifically related to refurbishing and repair. Administration had the opportunity to go look at the gateway signs at the wood ones near Cottonwood. That one has been victimized, if you will, by motor vehicle accidents several times. So that one does have a lien. Infrastructure did identify that, and they're gonna do their best to straighten it, and they have that already scheduled in the queue. As for the Welcome to Blue Ridge sign, one of the two signs was showing significant normal wear. That sign is gonna be replaced. We had one already in the shop, so that's in the queue to also be replaced. So just a bit of background on the gateway signage. So that's the wooden signage on the major highways coming into the municipality. Those are all from 1995 after the incorporation. They have been refurbished, repainted twice, the most recent time from 2008. So they are showing wear. You can see some of the photos there from the Cottonwood sign. They are showing wear. Council has expressed, though, interest in a municipal rebrand, and administration would recommend holding on any replacement signage until after a rebrand project, if that is what council is looking to do. Gateway signs are quite expensive. On average now, signs are looking at about $35,000 to $40,000 a piece for the major highway signs, because they have to follow specific Alberta transportation regulations to be able to see them a certain size, etc. We're looking at rebrands of sizable value. Would be a discussion for council budget deliberations, but on average municipalities are budgeting $70,000 to $200,000 for a rebrand project. So rebrand projects, they also generally encompass not only your gateway signs, your decals for your vehicles, you're looking at signs on your buildings, internal documentation, just like our, all of our internal fax cover letters. So that's all included. But one of the things you will also see in a rebrand project is a project timeline to implement what costs you incur. So generally you incur your most visible costs first, your gateway signs, your decals. So maybe in year one, that's what you're doing. And you scale that over several years to make it a little bit more manageable, but that's generally also part of that rebrand project. So definitely different things that the committee and council can consider.
When was our last rebrand?
I don't, your worship.
Before anybody, long before any of us were around
I
here.
don't believe we ever did a rebrand.
Heather, do you remember when this one was refreshed?
The logo was refreshed, I think 2014, 13, 14, because it was here before that. I was here in 12, so it was 10.
10, I
I think
think
it was 10,
Yeah,
and
sorry,
that
you're
was,
right.
and that wasn't a rebrand, that was a logo refresh. So you'll see on some of our old policies, you see that black and white kind of spatial logo, that was the original logo. So that logo was refreshed, again, that 2010
Yeah,
timeline.
2010, sorry.
Go ahead, Al.
Through the chair to Corinne. So the RFD is recommending sending this back to budget deliberations. At that time, the communications department would have kind of that phased-in approach of costs and some samples. Is that what you're thinking?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, we can certainly bring to council what different options look like. If it's just refurbishing these signs for some lipstick, we can bring that cost. If we're looking at a rebrand project, again, these are estimated costs. What Woodlands County wants to commit to those projects, money aside, again, the council through that budget process. The $70,000 rebrand does look a lot different than the $200,000 rebrand. And then we would put that out to tender, of course, you know, I mean, not only based on our policy, but we would want to see what options different organizations are giving, and of course, get most bang for your buck. But again, just be dependent on how much council's willing and wanting to put aside, and if the time is right.
That's a question. Our highway signs, if we just do a refurbish, they're still good to last a few more years. And
There at this time, there's no show of complete decay or rot that there's safety concerns. Do they look tired? Sure. But are they gonna fall over? Only if there's another incident, for example. So at this time, they are good to continue standing.
do a rebrand, one artwork sort of thing next year, over the course of 3-4 years, have it done.
Correct.
Yeah, this topic, but the Crest Cemetery sign is up, but the letters aren't really straight.
Through the chair to Councillor Colgan, I know nothing about the Hillcrest signs. I
Just-
believe that was.
I don't know who puts them up or what happened there, but they're not, they're kind of,
Well, we can certainly make a note that they're assessed.
On both sides or the
I think it's just the one,
north side?
yeah. But it's definitely not quite,
Isn't the one closest to the county office?
Yeah.
That's the worst one.
That's, I
North
call
side.
that the north side. That would be the north side.
So they're a little
I don't know,
off kilter?
I think what happened was they didn't have the sign when they put the posts in. And so they didn't have the
Okay.
measurement where the bolt holes were, so they had to go like this. That's what it looks like.
I've made a note for it to be assessed.
Okay, I've had a few people say like,
They look really good.
they're really nice signs, they're great signs, but they're about like the people that are heading for the cemetery, they're gonna fall over right away.
Through the chair to Councillor Colgan, well, it isn't Woodlands County's where we don't operate the cemetery, as you know, but
Yeah.
again, I don't know the history on that sign, but of course, if people are concerned, they can always put through a service tracker request.
Okay.
Help expedite the process for us.
Go ahead, Al.
Just prepared to make a motion that,
Can you just wait a second? I just want one more
yeah,
discussion. Just past the village sign, there's another sign there that came off from the old Mundo Lodge that was at the school. All there is 2 posts and a piece of half rotten OSB. I don't know if we can take that down when we put the new sign up, or is that in transportation's?
Like, is it right behind it?
Yeah, just 20 feet behind it.
And it shows no signage, like, it's just old debris. We would just request Alberta Transportation to have their contractor remove it.
There's one on each end of the.
Are you, sorry, through the chair, we'll take a photo for us? You send a photo to administration or service tracker request with, you can expedite the process. Have a look at that.
And where's the other side? Sorry.
It's on the other end of the Hamlet, on the north end.
Oh, okay, this is in the Hamlet, not on the highway. So on 658.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'll have to look again.
Okay, go ahead, Al.
move that the Governance and Priorities Committee for Gateway Sign Refurbishing and Municipal Rebrand to the 2024 budget deliberations.
Any discussion on the motion? No? Call the question, all in favor? Passed. I guess that's it. Next meeting date,
Already said.
it's already set, September 20th, 2023.
And that's 4:30?
4
4 o'clock.
for council's decision.
I remember that discussion, but why did we move it from 6 to 4? It was to accommodate a schedule, wasn't it?
It wasn't, this was, a request from administration for the second meeting, because normally we only have one meeting per month. Administration requested a second meeting to help
Yeah.
kind of catch up some backlog, but
The time, why is
Yeah.
the time?
I thought it was either you or maybe Counselor Wilhelm had a, I can't remember.
It wouldn't have been me because that conflicts with my football practice. But yeah, I recall that discussion.
We were in the fort when we had that chat.
We need a motion for the next meeting? Okay, I guess we're done. Adjournment.
Before we adjourn,
Yeah.
can we bump that meeting to 6? Does that work for you guys?
It would work better for me. But
The conflict was me, actually. I've got a special meeting in RMA boardroom at 6. So I'll have to tune into this one en route.
All right, then we'll just leave it. Motion to adjourn.
Motion accepted. All in favor?